There are men who've walked through hell and earned the right to be forgotten. John Wick was supposed to be one of those men. He lived quietly outside Charleston. A small house. A German shepherd named Atlas. Simple mornings running on the beach. Afternoons restoring a vintage Mustang. Evenings watching sunsets with bourbon. Pretending the past was really past. The Continental had honored his retirement. Blood sealed. Witnessed. After everything. After the high table burned and rebuilt. After all the bodies and bullets. They'd finally let him go. For 3 years, they'd kept their word. John had learned to live again. To be human. The kind of life Helen had wanted for him before the world took her away. He'd plant tomatoes in summer. Read books that had nothing to do with killing. He'd even started talking to his neighbors. Carefully, distantly, but talking nonetheless. Small steps toward normalcy. But peace, he'd learned, was always borrowed time. It was a Thursday when Atlas started barking. Not his usual bark. The warning bark. The one that said, "Danger, 3 black cars. Continental plates." And walking up the driveway, Winston. Older now. Grayer. Lines deeper in his face. But still carrying that particular Continental authority that came from surviving longer than anyone had a right to. John met him at the porch. Atlas beside him, growling low. "Winston." "John, I'm sorry to disturb your peace. Truly, but the table has activated a blood debt." "I don't owe the table anything. We settled accounts." "Not your debt." Winston pulled out a photograph. Hers. Sophia, bound to a chair, blood on her face, bruises darkening her skin, but her eyes, fierce, unbroken, defiant. Behind her, 2 of her dogs lay motionless on the floor. John's world went quiet. That particular kind of quiet that comes before violence. 18 hours ago. Casablanca, Winston said, his voice heavy. The devoted brotherhood. Zealots. They blame you for destroying the old order. For making the underworld soft. Sophia was bait. They knew you'd come. Where? Morocco. Atlas Mountains. Ancient fortress. 30 men, maybe more. They want trial by combat. Old world rules. You against their champion. You win. She goes free. You lose. Winston didn't finish. And if I don't come, they execute her. Slowly. And they broadcast it to every Continental on 3 continents. A message that the old ways aren't dead. John looked at the ocean. At the life he'd built. At the Mustang in the garage he'd never finish. At Atlas, who somehow always knew when everything was about to change. I'll need a plane to Casablanca. Clean weapons. And someone to watch Atlas. Winston nodded. Already arranged. Karen's in the car. He'll guard him with his life. John knelt beside Atlas. Held the dog's face in his hands. Looked into those intelligent eyes. Be good. I'll be back. A promise he might not keep. He stood. Walked to the car. Didn't look back. Because looking back wouldn't change what came next. Casablanca at night. Heat and dust and the call to prayer echoing across white walls. The Continental representative met him at a private hangar. Young. Nervous. Clean suit already showing sweat stains. Probably thought John Wick was a myth until this moment. Mr. Wick. Everything's prepared. Vehicle. Weapons. Intelligence package. The fortress is 4 hours northeast. 40 men now, more than we initially thought. They're expecting you. They've turned it into a spectacle. Tomorrow at sunset. John took the package. Got in the Land Rover. Drove into darkness toward the mountains, leaving the city lights behind like dying stars. The fortress sat on a cliff face overlooking a valley. Ancient stone. Narrow approaches. Perfect defensive position. The kind of place you choose when you want to control who lives and who dies. John stopped 2 miles out at dawn. Studied it through binoculars. Guard rotations. Sight lines. Weak points. His mind cataloged everything automatically, muscle memory from a life he'd tried to leave behind but never could. He spent the day preparing. Checking weapons. Loading magazines. Each motion precise. Familiar. The rituals of a man going to war. Again, by sunset, He was ready. He drove to the gates as the sky turned blood red. Guards waited. 8 of them. Professional. They searched him thoroughly. Took his weapons. Expected. He'd brought decoys. The real tools were already inside, hidden by a Continental courier in places only John knew to look. They led him through stone corridors lit by torches, ancient and modern mixed, security cameras mounted beside medieval sconces, downstairs, through passages, to a circular courtyard open to the darkening sky, 50 feet across, stone walls rising 30 feet. At the top, men with rifles. In the center, a fighting ring marked in chalk, and tied to a pillar at the far end, Sophia, beaten, one eye swollen shut, dry blood on her temple. But when she saw John, she smiled through split lips, still defiant, still unbroken. "You shouldn't have come," she called out, her voice rough. "Yeah, well, I never was good at staying retired." A man emerged from the shadows, tall, thick-necked, body covered in scars that told stories of violence survived. He wore traditional clothing, but moved like a fighter, like someone who'd spent his entire life learning how to end lives with his hands. John Wick, the Baba Yaga, the man who killed the table. "It's an honor." His voice carried across the courtyard. "I am Caleb. For 10 years I trained in the old ways. I've killed 73 men with my bare hands. I was chosen to be the Brotherhood's champion. Today, I prove my worth by taking your head." John stepped into the ring, hands loose, weight balanced, old world rules. Fight to the death. "I accept." Caleb smiled, cracked his knuckles, rolled his shoulders, and attacked, fast, faster than John expected. He came in low, feinted left, struck right. His fist connected with John's ribs. Solid hit, perfect technique. They circled, tested each other. 2 predators measuring strength and speed and will. Caleb struck again. Combination. 3 punches, knee strike, attempted takedown. John defended, deflected, created space. But Caleb was relentless. He pressed forward, each strike heavier than the last. Younger, stronger, hungry. John blocked, countered, but age was a factor now. He wasn't the man he'd been 10 years ago. His body remembered how to fight, and every injury, every toll. Caleb landed a kick to John's knee. Old bullet wound from the Russian contract. Pain shot through his leg. Caleb saw the weakness. Smiled like a shark smelling blood. "You're old, Wick. Slow. The legend is dying right here." He pressed the attack. Kicked the knee again. John buckled. Caleb followed with a punch that split John's lip, filled his mouth with the copper taste of blood. John went down, one knee on cold stone. The crowd above roared. Bloodlust, anticipation. Caleb circled, taking his time, savoring the moment. This is how it ends. The great Baba Yaga, beaten, broken, forgotten. John looked up through the blood, met Caleb's eyes, and smiled. "Yeah, but not yet." He exploded upward, caught Caleb off guard. 3 strikes. Throat, solar plexus, temple. Caleb staggered. John didn't stop. He flowed into the attack like water. Years of training. Decades of survival. Every technique he'd learned from every master who taught him to be a weapon. Caleb tried to defend. Tried to counter. But John was inside his guard now. Too close, too fast, too experienced. He struck pressure points, applied joint locks, breaks that didn't kill but disabled, made every motion cost, every breath hurt. Caleb fell. John didn't let him recover. He dropped down, arm around Caleb's throat. Perfect rear naked choke, cutting off blood to the brain. Caleb thrashed, clawed at John's arms, desperate, drowning in air. "You wanted the old ways," John whispered in his ear. "Here they are." Caleb's struggles weakened, slowed, stopped. John held on 5 more seconds, making absolutely sure. Then let go. Caleb collapsed, dead eyes staring at nothing. The courtyard fell silent. 50 men holding their breath. John stood slowly, Pain in his knee, blood in his mouth. He looked up at the men with rifles, daring them, waiting. "The challenge is complete," one of them finally said. "The woman goes free. These are the old ways, the old rules. We honor them." They cut Sophia down. Her legs gave out. John caught her, held her up. "You're an idiot," she muttered against his shoulder. "I've been told." They made it to the gates, to the Land Rover. Guards watching but not interfering. Honor. Rules. The only things keeping them alive. "I'm sorry they used me," Sophia said as John drove away, the fortress disappearing behind them in the darkness. "I'm sorry I couldn't get there sooner." She laughed. "Painful. Wet. We're a pair, aren't we? Two broken killers trying to stay retired. How's that working out?" "Terrible. Absolutely terrible." The Continental in Casablanca kept Sophia for 3 days. Doctors, stitches, medicine, rest. John stayed close, slept in a chair outside her room. Old habits, old instincts, old promises. On the 4th day, she was strong enough to talk. "They're gone. My dogs. The only things I had left that were pure, that were good." Her voice broke, raw. "I thought I'd paid my debts. Suffered enough. Earned my peace. But there's no such thing, is there? For people like us. There's just pauses between the violence." John was quiet, because she was right. Because he'd learned the same lesson over and over. "You believe we could ever really be free?" she asked, looking at it with eyes that had seen too much. He thought about Charleston, about Atlas waiting, about sunsets and bourbon, and the illusion of normalcy. "I want to believe it," he said finally. "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" Sophia reached out, took his hand. Squeezed once. "Thank you. For coming. For risking everything. Again. You'd do the same." "Yeah, I would. That's our curse." Winston arrived on the 5th day with documents. Blood-sealed contracts. Witnesses from 3 Continental branches. "It's done. The Brotherhood has stood down. Your debts are satisfied. Both of you. You're free. Officially. Permanently." Winston smiled slightly. Tired. The Continental made it clear that pursuing either of you further would result in complete annihilation. We had leverage. Financial records. Member lists. Enough to destroy them. They chose survival. "So it's over," John said. "For now. Always for now. But this time it's witnessed. Sealed. Backed by the full authority of the table." Winston placed a hand on John's shoulder. "Go home, John. See your dog. Live your life. You've earned it. God knows you've earned it." John flew back to Charleston the next morning. Sophia went as far as the States, still figuring out what came next. Where to go. How to rebuild. Again, "I might get a place on the coast," she said at their connection gate. Small. Quiet. Maybe adopt a dog. Start over. Again. "It's possible. I've done it. Almost works." She laughed. Bitter. Honest. "Almost. That's the best we can hope for, isn't it? Almost normal. Almost peaceful. Almost free. It's better than nothing." "Yeah, it is." They hugged once. Brief. Meaningful. 2 warriors acknowledging shared pain. Shared survival. Shared understanding. "Take care of yourself, John Wick." "You too, Sophia." When John finally pulled into his driveway, the sun was setting. Gold and purple and perfect. Sharon was on the porch. Atlas beside him. The moment the dog saw John, he bolted down the steps, tail whipping, entire body vibrating with pure joy. John knelt down, let Atlas nearly bowl him over, held him tight, buried his face in the dog's fur, and let himself feel everything he'd been holding back. Relief, gratitude, love. "Thank you," he said to Sharon, standing. "It was my honor. He's a remarkable animal. Loyal. True." Sharon smiled, much like his master. "The manager asked me to convey a message. Welcome home. Mr. Wick, stay as long as you can." Then he was gone. Black car disappearing down the road. John stood with Atlas in his driveway. looked at his house, at the life waiting inside, at the garage with the Mustang he'd been restoring, at the sunset painting everything gold and purple and impossibly beautiful. This was what he'd fought for. This moment, this breath, this simple, perfect peace. He knew it wouldn't last forever. Nothing ever did. But that wasn't the point. The point was that it existed at all. That between the violence and darkness, there were moments like this. Moments of light. Moments worth killing for. Worth dying for. He walked to his porch. Atlas beside him, pressed against his leg. Poured himself a drink. Bourbon. Good stuff. Sat down in his chair and watched the sun set over the ocean. Tomorrow he'd work on the car. The day after, he'd run on the beach with Atlas. Maybe he'd finish that book he'd started. Cook something complicated. Fix the fence that had been leaning since winter. Live a life for as long as the world let him. They say John Wick is unkillable, unstoppable, a force of nature. But that's not true. John Wick is just a man who's lost everything and fought to find something worth keeping. A man who's made mistakes and paid for them in blood. A man who wants, more than anything, to be something other than what the world made him. He's not unkillable. He's just unwilling to quit. And maybe that's the same thing. Maybe that's the only immortality men like him ever get. Not the absence of death, but the refusal to surrender. One sunset at a time. One moment of peace at a time. One carefully chosen battle at a time. Until finally, maybe, the world stops calling. And he gets to keep what he's fought so hard to protect. Not revenge. Not redemption. Just life. Simple. Quiet. His